Every one of us carries a story we don't always talk about. The quiet battles, the heavy days, the moments that cracked us open, and the moments that stitched us back together. We've all stumbled. We've all broken. We've all stood at the edge of something we weren't sure we could come back from. And somehow, through strength we didn't know we had, we rose anyway. Because inside every person, there is a spark that refuses to die, a hope that refuses to stay silent, a heart that refuses to give up no matter how dark the night gets. And that's why we're here, to listen, to learn, to witness the courage it takes just to be human. Every soul you hear on the show has walked through something that shaped them, sharpened them, and carried them forward. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a battle. Everyone has a journey. And this is where you come to hear it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Before we begin, just a quick reminder. We are not medical doctors, nor are we offering medical, psychological, or therapeutic advice. Everything shared in this conversation is for educational and informational purposes only, reflecting our own experiences and the perspectives of our guests. Please consult a qualified professional for any medical or mental health concerns. Tonight, family, we open the door to a kind of courage most people will never fully understand. My guest is someone who has walked through storms that began long before she ever had a choice. She carries with her a story of survival so powerful, so deeply human, that it demands to be heard with open hearts and open minds. She lives with OSDD, an experience shaped not by weakness but by resilience, not by brokenness but by the brilliance of a mind that found a way to endure the unendurable. And today, she stands here not as for someone defined by trauma, but as someone defined by strength, by truth, by growth, and by courage that could light a room. So please join me in welcoming a woman who is living proof that healing is not a straight line, that identity can be many things, and that the human spirit is capable of rising again and again. And it is an honor to have her here with us today. Angel, how are you today?
I am doing great. That is a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So before we start, I would like to let people know what OSDD is. It's or other specified dissociative disorder. It refers to symptoms of dissociation that cause significant distress or impairment but do not meet the full criteria for another specified dissociative disorder, such as depersonalization, derealization disorder, dissociative amnesia, or dissociative identity disorder. Clinicians specify the reason for the diagnosis, which can include ongoing dissociative symptoms with partial identity shifts without amnesia, brief dissociative states due to stress or other trance-like states. And some characteristics of OSDD. Symptoms. The symptoms are similar to other dissociative disorders but don't fit neatly into a single category. Examples include identity, confusion, and shifts that are less severe than those found in dissociative identity disorder. Dissociative states or flashbacks in response to specified stressors. Trance-like experiences where a person is unresponsive or has altered awarenesses. A diagnosis of OSDD is made when a person experiences these dissociative symptoms, but they do not meet the full diagnostic criteria for another dissociative disorder. And distress and impairment. Like other mental health conditions, OSDD can cause significant distress and interfere with a person's ability to function in everyday life. It is also important to distinguish OSDD from other dissociative disorders. For example, depersonalization and derealization disorder involves feelings of being detached from oneself or that the world is unreal but without significant identity disturbances. Dissociative amnesia, which primarily involves memory loss for important or personal information or a specific event. And then you have dissociative identity disorder, characterized by the presence of two or more distinct personality states and amnesia for routine events. So I'm sorry to go into all that, but I just wanted to lay it out there for everybody that's listening, for the listeners. So Angel, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your OSDD.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad that all of that sounded pretty accurate. There is a lot of different ways out there that it has been described and whatnot. Lots of different research and professionals see it differently. But yeah, I would agree with everything you said. And yeah, basically, like, the simplest way that I learned about it, it is a little bit more complex than this, but like, basically, to have a diagnosis of DID, you need to have dissociation, at least 2 alters, and amnesia between alters. And for OSDD, you basically have one or the other, or somewhere on a spectrum of those. So I have dissociation and alters, but I have no amnesia between my alters. They all know everything. They can talk to each other if they choose to. Sometimes
Okay.
they choose not to.
Yeah, so they almost interact with one another and So you, like you said, you don't have amnesia, so one alter knows the other alter. Where I
Mhm.
think in dissociative disorder, where it's you get the amnesia and the one doesn't know about the other per se. Is that correct?
Mhm. Yep. And yeah, like I didn't know about them either until like I started like exploring this. Like I was a writer. I wanted to be an author or whatever. So I always had a lot of like character ideas and everything like that. And yeah, when I was younger, um it started probably around high school. I was writing a fan fiction about my favorite YouTuber, as teenage girls often do, and I started seeing the main character with me sometimes. Like I would be sitting in the back of my mom's car and I would see him sitting next to me. Um and yeah, he would come generally at night, like when I would lay down, when the world was quiet and I didn't have those distractions anymore and the lonely feelings and all of that came in. He would come and say, "It's okay," and just be comforting. And so, yeah. And then over time, more came. And yeah, I thought that they were just imaginary characters. And then I took a dissociative test where it asked towards the end, "Have you felt anybody else taking this test with you?" And I was like, have I? Are they real? So, yeah.
So yeah, so what age was that? How old were you when you realized that?
Um, yeah, so I started seeing the alters when I was like 15 or 16, probably around the time where I had my toxic relationship, which is the main thing that like triggered it. And I had that realization about it's been sort of like a 2-year journey, I guess. Like I started by going to a psychiatrist because I was just feeling like really depressed and having a lot of triggers. I had a new relationship, and so just a lot of my intimacy triggers and everything were coming back up. And so I was like, I just want to know what's wrong with me. And so I went to a psychiatrist in like 2023, I think. But she said that since he did not physically abuse me or assault me, that she could not diagnose me with PTSD. So that was kind of invalidating to hear that your trauma isn't quote unquote like traumatic enough. And I was like, okay, so then what do you suggest I do? She says, I suggest therapy. And I'm like, okay, I've tried therapy before, wasn't super helpful, but sure, I'll try again. And so, yes, I found a very good therapist. She was very kind and everything like that. And she, after a couple sessions, did in fact diagnose me with PTSD. After telling her my story and everything, she said, like, yeah, no, your symptoms and your experience, it doesn't just have to be physical to be traumatic. Like, it can also be mental, emotional, like manipulation, which is basically what happened. And so, yeah. And excuse me, she recommended a type of therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, something like that, which she was not licensed in yet. And so she referred me to another therapist. So I started seeing him for a little while. And yeah, we never actually ended up doing EMDR because this whole mess was unraveling in my head, and he was like, I don't think it's safe to do that yet. And so, yeah, basically just talking with him and just all the things I was going through with my boyfriend, like, it just sort of like we would, because one of the first things you need to do to start EMDR therapy is you need to create what they call like a safe place or a calm state in your head so that if you get like triggered, you have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to do that for me. We were trying to make a safe place, but it wasn't working. Every time that I would try to make a place, my ex would show up. Like I would see him there, or I would have a memory about him, and like I just could not keep him out no matter what I did.
Yeah.
And it was hard to explain that, obviously, to a therapist, but I was just like, I don't know, like I'm just scared that there's like something like sabotaging me, like something like trying to block my healing or something. And he's like, okay, let's see if there is something sabotaging you. You take this test. So yeah, he gave me a dissociative test, and then yeah, it revealed that at first he didn't really know what it said. He wasn't the most experienced in this, but he said it was definitely some sort of dissociative something. But going through this whole process, I had started researching because obviously I wanted to know what the heck was going on. And I found that there is a dissociative subtype of PTSD. So I thought, okay, maybe it's that. But then I was also just hearing all these voices and whatever, seeing these characters. And so I was looking up, like, okay, dissociation with characters. And like I had heard of DID before. I used to be very interested in DID. I watched YouTubers with it and everything like that, but I never thought I had anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it came up with OSDD, other specified dissociative disorder, and I started reading it and I was like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. And so I asked him, my therapist, like, could it be this? And then he looked at the test again and he's like, oh yeah, look at the top, it does say OSDD. And I was just like, okay, but that wasn't actually enough to get me diagnosed.
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, that was just like a test and he wasn't like a psychologist or whatever. And yeah, I then, because neither of my therapists obviously had enough experience with alters or this sort of thing, and so I went searching for somebody else who had more experience. And yes, I did IFS therapy with her, which is internal family systems, which you don't have to have like alters to do. Anybody can do it because everybody has parts of themselves. Like if you've ever said like, oh, my inner child is like coming out, like that doesn't mean that it's an alter. Like it's a part of you, you know? And so basically IFS is just to help those parts like talk to each other and like figure out like what they
What's
do.
going on? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I did
So
that. Yeah,
so
go
I
ahead.
think, what I want to let people know is that,
Mhm.
um, Angel and I have been talking. We've been going back and forth. Before we got together on the episode, we talked on FaceTime a few times. What we're trying to do is shine a light on, OSDD, because there is, you're hearing Angel's struggles with trying to get diagnosed with it from one doctor to the next, her actually having to go out and physically look for another one that's specialized in OSDD. And it's just not right in a country where we live in, that, these medical professionals should be equipped with the tools to, diagnose and take care of Angel. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to shine a light on OSDD and shine a light on the real issue is making sure that we can get people the right help with the right professionals that they need. We're shining a light on it, and we're telling Angel's story for the first time. She spoke to therapists, spoke to family. She's never really spoken out about it in public to, a podcast world. So we definitely appreciate you coming on and being brave enough to come on and share your story, because it's stories like this that we're bringing to the listeners, that, bringing your story to the forefront and your struggles with, finding doctors and your mental health, because mental health is a real thing. It's a big thing. And I think we all suffer from some type of mental health issues, as a society and as a whole. So can you share what the process was of getting a diagnosis, which, you just talked about briefly, and then seeking answers, which again, you had to go online, you had to search it all up, find it out yourself. So you were sort of a kid lost, doing your own research, looking for your own answers with the medical field, the doctors and everybody. Nobody had really an answer for you. I think a lot of times that doctors and psychiatrists, I think one of the biggest things is, here, take this little pill, you're going to feel better. Take this pill and you're going to feel better. I remember going through my own struggles with depression and anxiety, and at one point it was, take this pill in the morning, but then at night you're going to take this one and it's going to piggyback off the one you took this morning, and it's going to counteract that. And it's just like, I'm not a guinea pig. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to be taking all these pills. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of my mental health, which is the first thing that people need to do, is realize it. Seek professional help, call or talk to somebody that's close to you, a friend, a family, a member, a neighbor, or seek, counseling. I've been in counseling almost 17 years off and on. And I'm 41. So a little less than half my life I've been in it, but I realized that I needed it, and I still constantly go today. So when you finally get the diagnosis, and I know you were seeking answers, what was it like for you emotionally?
Yeah, so it was definitely like conflicting emotions because the first time I tried to get diagnosed, I was under the impression that the psychological evaluation or whatever was going to take like at least 2 hours. Like it was going to be pretty in depth, all this. But she just talked to me, asked me questions for like 30 minutes, and then was like, yeah, no, I don't, your symptoms are atypical, and I don't see any sort of like giving you a dissociative test would not reveal anything. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, so
And so that was,
she's just looking at you like you're a kid, just, your imagination's running wild and,
hmm
kids will be kids per se, but
yeah.
deep down inside you knew that there was something wrong. I
hmm
th- I think I think when we had talked before, I think you had mentioned that there was how many different alters that you have? I think there was it
Yeah. Like,
32?
no, no, around like 16.
Oh, 16, 16. So half of that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I don't know where I got 32 from, but so 16. So let me ask you a question of that. So at any point in time, can you have, all 16 alters at once? Or is it just like one, two, three, or four, or all 16 manifesting itself where it's almost, going through your head of this one and this one and, 16 different alters that you're at?
Yeah. So most of the time it will just be like one or two that are
Okay.
near the front, is what they call it. Like when you can like really hear them and everything like that. But when I was first going through all of this and like I call it like the dam broke or whatever and was like, we're all here, we all want to help. And I'm like, okay. Like I would
Yeah.
just wake up and they would all be like just chattering and I'm just like, please stop.
So when you're going through that, right? So you have two of them in the forefront. I apologize to my listeners because I don't think we've spoken about the alters, right? The alters that you talk about. Can you explain to the listeners what the alters are? In your own words.
Yes, absolutely. So, what most people will be familiar with will be DID, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. So basically, you have multiple identities living inside of you, everything like that. And in the case of DID, the alters generally manifest from repeated trauma in childhood, generally like sexual abuse or things like that, because a child's brain cannot fully understand what's happening. It's like this person is supposed to be like taking care of me and they're hurting me. Like, how can both of these things be true at the same time? And so it creates one part of your brain that has no memory of the trauma and then another part that holds all of the trauma or multiple. There's polyfragmented systems that can have hundreds of alters. But yes, for me, for OSDD, most of mine came later in life when I was a teenager. I think possibly there might have been one when I was a child because I was just so there can be alters that are based on like characters or celebrities or things like that. And so
Okay.
I was a kid and I was laying in bed and I had just watched the movie Rise of the Guardians that day and I just saw Jack Frost in my room and he was like doing all these weird things. Like he's not a villain in the movie, but like he was just acting really weird and I was like, "Why? Who are you? Why are you here?" um but yeah, so I saw him for a little while, but then it went away and then yeah, started up again in when I was 15, 16.
So that was your very first instance of a
Mhm.
alter.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And how old were you then? Did you say?
Honestly, if something didn't happen at school, I have no relative of like how old was I. I usually
Yeah.
just say everything happened when I was like 7.
Yeah, so you were a kid. So you were a kid, and then it sort of went away and didn't manifest itself till after your, traumatic relationship. So, how would you describe OSDD in your own words to someone who only knows the stereotypes?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stereotypes about personality disorders that like there are alters that are violent, that want to hurt people, which is generally not true. And sorry, just one sec.
Yeah, no, one of the things I would like to say is that I don't think people realize is that just because someone is diagnosed with a mental health disorder or mental health condition doesn't mean that they're the monster underneath your bed. I think a lot of times movies and TV shows and the news likes to portray mental illness as something that's bad, that's hiding under your bed and stay away from it. But it's conversations like these that we're having to shine a light on it, to show that there are beautiful people in this world like you, Angel, that do have the, OSDD, but it's something that you're fighting through, you're working on, and you're a productive person in society. It doesn't mean that all people with mental illness are crazies and because I think that's a big thing that people have that misconception of, that all people with mental health illnesses deserve to be locked away in an institute and never heard from again.
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it's just really sad because obviously most mental illness stems from being hurt. Like people who are have these issues, something generally like happened to them. And honestly, that usually makes them some of the most sympathetic, empathetic people, like because they don't want other people to feel that hurt, you know? But people just see it, they don't understand it. They're like, what do you mean there's more than one of you? Like, no, I see you. There's one of you standing here. Like, but it just doesn't work that way. You gotta
Yeah.
learn about the brain, learn about how it works, and this and that.
Yeah, and for anyone that's listening, go online and look up OSDD. Do a little
Hmm.
bit of your own research, because you can hear it from Angel here, but you can also do a little bit of your own research and see that too often I think people are, with mental health disorders, oh, they're crazy or they're this, and where you almost get to the point, where you don't want to share your story or you don't want to share anything because people look at you differently. And just because I'm going through something, and like you said, the biggest thing for me is a lot of the OSDD stems from trauma inflicted at a young age or trauma inflicted, when you were younger. And then here you are trying to talk about it and you're being traumatized again,
Hmm.
when you almost, where it almost forces you into isolation because you don't want to deal with anybody because here they are looking at you like, you have something wrong with you when
Hmm.
it's tough, So what does daily life look like for you in your system and how does it all work together?
Yeah, so it has definitely shifted over time. Because yeah, at first, before going on this journey and everything, like they would basically just come to like comfort me or make me laugh. But then, yeah, once the dam broke or whatever, and I knew that they were all there, they would be super loud. And so I would just give each of them a task, basically. I would be like, okay, like, Mindy, you can pick out our outfit for today. Jordan, you can help me drive to work. Taylor, you can help me at work. And all these things so that they just wouldn't all be coming at me constantly. And yeah, that was the biggest thing that I had to work on in therapy was like setting those boundaries with them and like learning how to quiet the noise.
Yeah. And that must be tough when you have 4 or 5 different voices inside,
Hmm.
trying to push to the forefront and try to get your attention, So here's another one. If you're comfortable with answering this, what helps you communicate internally with your POTS or alters?
Yes. So for me, yeah, I'd say it probably started with that third pair excuse me, therapist that I had when we were doing IFS and all of that. We did end up creating a safe place for me. Uh, It was like, for me, I had to make it somewhere that, like, he had never been before. That's somewhere that where I felt the most like me. And so, like, I made it my uncle's farm where we would always have Christmas and the 4th of July and everything because that was a
Yeah.
happy place for me. And so I would just have them, if they wanted to talk, come there and we would talk there. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, I sort of set up a mechanism of like sort of like I have like a door now, I guess, to like the headspace or whatever that they have to like knock on, like, hey, can I talk to you right now? Like, no, I'm busy right now. I'll talk to you later.
Almost setting those boundaries,
Yeah.
where they're not just all allowed to, come to the front and disturb you while you're doing your regular daily work or
Hmm.
so how do different parts of your system support or protect you in ways that people may not understand?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably hard for anybody to understand. I mean, maybe not so much like, because it, for me, it mainly stemmed from like a lot of loneliness and
Yeah.
yeah, just confusion about people and just how people can be so, just how they can hurt you and things like that. And like people in your head, imaginary things that they can hurt you. They'll do whatever you want. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, in my case, they supported me through those lonely times so that I didn't feel alone. I felt like I had friends or family with me and they would protect me in ways that ultimately, like, it's because PTSD comes with it, like, all dissociative disorders, you also have PTSD. And so, but in my case, I think when I would get triggered with the flashbacks and everything, the alters would all just kind of like surge forward and just like fight over, like, I call it the co-pilot seat of like, no, we need to do this, we need to do this. And so I would just kind of like shut down and yeah, just dissociate. Like I would just like stare off into space and just like, I just couldn't talk, couldn't really do anything.
Yeah.
But to them, that was safer than trying to address the issue because the person, like, if you say something wrong or if they don't understand, like, they'll hurt you more. Like, so just don't do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how it was for a while. And yeah, now that I've kind of come through the other side, it, yeah, they're just kind of there as support, as like a family.
Yeah. So how does stress or emotional overwhelm affect your system or the way your pots step forward? I think you just answered that with, sometimes things are going on and they'll all be rushing to the forefront to be co-pilot. And
Hmm.
so what does grounding look like for you, especially on days when dissociation is heavy?
Yeah. I definitely had to learn some grounding on my own, but then through therapy and everything, they taught me other things. Like the main thing that I do now is ice. If you hold ice or whatever, like it will like snap you back to reality because your brain's like, "Ah, why?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
especially if
that's
you
one
like,
of the things with anxiety as well. That's one of the big things they say is grab some ice and it
mm-hmm,
sort of grounds you and brings you back and distracts you from being anxious to, hey, my hands are cold. That's really cold.
mm-hmm, yep, yep. And yeah, they told me especially like if you put it on your neck, it's called like the vagus nerve, like that'll wake you up like
Yes.
instantly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll do that sometimes, like breathing exercises, of course, like scents, and like smelling like a candle or something like that can help you ground. Yeah, doing like sensory things, like what are 5 things that I can see? What are 4 things that I can feel? 3 things that I can hear?
Here. So, how do you navigate relationships or work when different pots have different needs or reactions?
Yeah, so that was definitely um tough when everybody wanted to do different things. I want to watch this. I want to play this game, but we got to do this chore. Blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, sort of like I said, like figured out that if I sort of just like give them a task or tell them like we can't do this right now, but I will revisit this when I have time, they generally understand and are like, okay.
And I think too, it goes back to setting those boundaries now where they have to knock on that door to come forward, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
So before we get on to the next question, I just want to give everyone again a quick reminder. We are not medical doctors, nor are we offering medical, psychological, or therapeutic advice. Everything shared in this conversation is for educational and informational purposes only, reflecting our own experiences and the perspective of our guests. Please consult a qualified professional for any medical or mental health concern. So, for the next question, what does healing mean to you? Not in the sense of fixing, but in the sense of growing and living safely.
Yes, that is definitely a big thing because, yeah, a lot of people, a lot of professionals still see the only way to fix or heal DID, OSDD, people living as systems is integration or fusion to go back to just being one person. A, that's extremely difficult, takes a lot of time. And B, a lot of systems just don't want to do that because,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
they're all part of you. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's called functional multiplicity, where you're trying to work cohesively. And yeah, there was a study that said like 97% of systems or whatever preferred working toward functional multiplicity over integration. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's very easy for professionals to say, you should just be one. They're not
Hmm.
going through what you're going through, nor fighting through daily what you're fighting through daily. So, and I hate that word, right? The word that broken, you're broken. I hate that. You're broken. Everybody's broken. I don't like to say that we're broken. The thing I like to say is that we're all on a journey, a healing journey in one way or another. And, sometimes in life things do come up, whether it's a traumatic thing as a kid, even traumatic things as adults, the loss of a parent, the loss of a grandparent, the loss of a loved one, the
Hmm.
loss of a boyfriend or a loss of a girlfriend, not in the sense that they're not that they're gone, that they have
Mhm.
passed, but that you're no longer with them. And so it's small things like that. I don't like to say that we're broken. We're all work in progress. There's nobody here that's perfect. Oh, to the next question. So, what therapeutic approaches or support systems have helped you feel more stable or understood? Because I don't think it's more of a stable thing for you. I think it's just more of an understanding. You want people to understand what OSDD is, not that you're unstable. Because we've had many conversations, and I have never once said to myself, angels and say, nothing like that. We've had very, very intelligent conversations, so I wasn't feeling good, and Angel and I were supposed to link up. I think it was the beginning of the week or last week, and I had some issues going on that I had to deal with. And then again, last night we were supposed to get on at 7 o'clock, but yesterday I had totally forgot. I had a long list of, I started at 8 yesterday morning and finished about 6:30. So when I had finally finished and got to my email, I had checked it and I forgot we had a 7. So we scheduled it for first thing this morning because I felt so bad. But, there's nothing unstable about Angel at all. She's here today sharing her message for the first time. She's sharing her story for the first time with the public. So you can hear what it's like for someone that is living with OSDD in your own words, in Angel's words. Yesterday, I had a young lady on who at 17 escaped the Amish community, and she never looked back. And she left at 17. She became very successful with everything that she did. And one of the biggest thing that we were talking about yesterday with her was, her journey. And this is Angel's journey, everybody. Angel is going through OSDD. She's navigating life on her terms, and she's able to do it freely. And I'm glad we have her here sharing her story, because without her, we wouldn't know anything about OSDD, what it is, what it isn't, some of the misconceptions, and also what it took Angel to go through having to do her own having to do her own research, having to find her own doctor, psychiatrist that fit the needs of what OSDD is and help her on this healing path forward. So, how do you prioritize safety and comfort within your system during triggering or stressful moments?
Yes. Safety and comfort. Yes, definitely. It's tough. Honestly, I'd say that's probably the thing that I
Struggle
struggled
with
with the
most?
most. Because the way that I generally reacted to triggers and whatnot was, this is something that a lot of people don't know. There's not just fight or flight, there's actually 5 Fs. There's fight, flight, fawn, freeze, or flop. And so I would usually default to fawning, which is when you like placate the person or the situation because
Yeah.
you don't want to make it worse. You're just like, okay, I'll do what you want, even though it's not what I want, because me being hurt is better than you being hurt. And so, yeah, that was definitely what I had to work on, prioritizing my safety, my comfort. And yes, I did that basically just by telling myself that my feelings are just as important as theirs. And yeah, just really talking and listening to them, and instead of just like trying to push them away, like if they're being like if they're crying, whatever, like I don't want to deal with it. Like no, like letting them in, talking to them, like, okay, how can we like calm this down?
Are there ever points where you feel unsafe?
Safe. Not really. The way I would explain it is like trauma lives in the body more than the brain. And so I may not, like, I know logically that I am not in any danger, but my body is like, we've been in a similar situation to this before, so I don't want to be in it. um,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's also what, because I have an alter that was based on my ex. He was
Yeah.
my persecutor. And so that was sort of his job, would be, he would be talking in the back of my head when I was trying to be physical, whatever. Like, you're just being used again. Like, oh, like this isn't blah, 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 whatever. And so in those cases, I maybe would feel like, oh, should I be scared right now? Like, I don't think so. But yeah, it's just really hard.
Yeah, no, so for me with my anxiety and sometimes my depression, one of the biggest things that happens to me is I always try to push it down, especially the anxiety, and push it down to the point sometimes where I start getting body spasms, right?
Mm,
Where my shoulders will start twitching, and my upper body will start moving to the point where it scares me, to the point where it's like I'm having a heart attack, but I know in my head,
Mhm.
I'm just simply going through a anxiety panic attack. I'll tell a brief story. Years ago, I was in the hospital doing a sleep study for sleep apnea, and they put all the machines on and everything. And I always, my heart always races when I'm in the hospital, and, like anyone naturally. So the lady comes in, the nurse does, as after she put everything on, she said, "We got to go across the street to the emergency room." Well, what's going on?
Mhm.
"I think you're having a heart attack." And I said to her, "Look, no." I said, "I'm having a panic attack." "No, you're not." And I said, "Look, you guys told me I couldn't take my medication 24 hours before doing this. I haven't taken my medication. I'm in the hospital." We go across the street. 45 minutes later, "Oh, he's just having a panic." I said, "I told you that." I said, "I know my body more than anybody else." I knew I was safe, but it's funny because I'm in the hospital setting, right? And I know I'm safe and I'm just having a panic attack. But when I'm at home and I start getting that same thing, I think I'm having a heart attack that I have to get to the hospital.
Mhm.
So our body is very in tune sometimes, but your body's in tune, but your mind may not.
Mhm.
So we got a couple more questions. So how has OSDD shaped your understanding of identity, selfhood, or inner strength?
Yes, that's definitely been I mean, I've always very much respected and
You okay?
yeah, sorry, just need a sec.
You want me to stop recording?
No, it's good. Okay, I think I'm back. Okay, so yes, identity, personhood, how has that changed? Yes, I've always been very accepting of everybody. Everybody is unique. Everybody is going through their own shit. And yes, everybody is made of, like I said, like some are more distinct, separate than others, but at the end of the day, we are all our emotions, we are our memories, we are our trauma, we are our communities, the people that we've grown up with. And yeah, going through all of this and trying to figure out if I am what is my identity? Who am I? Am I Angel? Am I 16 people? Am I what is it? And at the end of the day, it doesn't super matter. Like, we all are just existing, doing our
Yeah.
best, like, and we just need to be compassionate and, yeah, find that inner strength. Like you said, it's definitely also been a journey of finding the inner strength, which a lot of the time I think like therapy definitely helps with that because people get stuck in those negative thought loops and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to have somebody else be a mirror, a bouncing board for you to be like, I actually do know what I need to do. I have this strength inside of me.
Yeah, no, I think it's your inner strength, that pulls you up every day and gets you going and gets you moving. And again, I want to thank you again. I got two more questions before we finish, but I just, can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your heartfelt story and your journey of what you're going through with OSDD, and also shining a light on it and being one that is able to come on here and openly and freely discuss it and talk about it, because you're not hiding behind the door, Angel. You're kicking through that door, and you're spreading your message about OSDD and what it's like living with it and dealing with it every day. So the strength for you to come on here and do that, I appreciate that, and I just want to say thank you.
Yes,
So
thank you.
So, what would you want people to know about OSDD that could help reduce stigma and increase compassion? And I think one of the biggest things, I think from talking with you the many times that we have, I would like to say that you're very much like me. I think as an empath, where oftentimes we don't worry about our feelings. We don't take into consideration our feelings. It's everybody else's. It's your boyfriends, it's your girlfriends, it's your coworkers, it's your friend at work that had a shitty day, and even though you had a shitty day the last 7 in a row, here you are heaping praise and love on that person, because oftentimes I feel like I'm not capable of accepting love almost, but I'm capable of giving it out, where I do open my heart sometimes, but when I do, most of the time I get hurt. So I choose to keep my heart very closed and guarded. But like you, everything you're going through, I think you're very much like me with an empath, where everyone else's needs comes first before ours.
Hmm.
So what would you want people to know about OSDD that could help them reduce the stigma and increase compassion?
Well, yes, this is the first time that I've told my story publicly, but I have just doing all this research and seeing how many people and professionals just don't know about it, even though there have been studies that show that DID and OSDD are more prevalent, have a higher global percentage than anorexia and schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, but nobody knows about them. Nobody talks about them because they are so stigmatized because of the media and everything. Movies like Split, they're dangerous, they're different, but it has been shifting a little in modern times. There are ones that are better, like the Moon Knight from Marvel. He has DID. That was a really good series, but he also has a violent alter. And that's another thing too of like making disability or mental health into like a superpower.
Yeah.
That's also another thing that media likes to do. And like people are like, oh yeah, like we're showing like you're have this like great inner strength, like you're so brave, all this and that. They call it like inspiration porn. But like when you're actually like living through it, it's like, this is just my daily life. Like there's nothing like super special about it. Like
Yeah.
this is just how it is, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and there's a Apple series called The Crowded Room with Tom Holland. That one was really good. The way that they visualized or showed like the headspace and the alters switching and everything like that. But yeah, obviously that was also based around violence and all of that.
Yeah.
So we just need stories like this that just tell like it we aren't trying to hurt anybody at the end of the day. Like most systems and everything, there are a very high prevalence of like suicidal ideation because all of the violence is internalized because children will have guilt about what happened to them. They'll think like, oh, if I did this or if I was like this wouldn't have happened. Like, this is my fault. And so all of that violence manifests itself into generally an alter or whatever negative
Yeah.
self-talk. And so, yes, any violence is really just inside. And we don't want to hurt people. We don't want anybody to hurt the way that we hurt. So, like, we just want people to understand and just be like, okay, I hear you. You're valid.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we were talking about earlier, where the media has a great way of portraying people with mental health illnesses that, they're the monster under your bed. They're the homeless man on the street that's screaming and yelling and hurting people. And no, here's a perfect example of someone suffering with OSDD, which is Angel. And she's here sharing her story and her journey. And, like I said, there's nothing. She's not here to hurt anybody. Anybody. She wants to shine light on OSDD. She wants to make sure that there's more resources for people suffering with OSDD. And she just wants to shine a light on it and bring it to the forefront and let people know what it is, what it isn't, and how her journey is going now in life with OSDD. Yeah.
Something that I've found very fascinating when people talk about um, mental health or disability or all of this, they usually default to the word suffering. Like you say, you're suffering from OSDD or you're suffering from blindness or whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like as a society, we should evolve that language because just because somebody has a disorder or a disability doesn't inherently mean that they are suffering, that their life is awful all of the time. Like, does it give us challenges? Like, yes, of course, but everybody has challenges. Like, you wouldn't say that somebody is suffering from being too tall. Like,
Yeah.
it's a part of us, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
so I would say
it's,
more
yeah.
of, instead of saying suffering with, living with OSDD.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's not something, like you said, you're very compassionate, and there's so many misconceptions about it. Make that shift and start focusing more on OSDD. And, because that's why we're here. We're trying to shine a light and get some more, light onto OSDD. So if this is the last question, I want to thank you again for coming on. So if someone listening is struggling with dissociation or feels frightened by their own experiences, what message would you want to give them, Angel?
I just want you to know that you're valid and no matter like You don't need a label or a diagnosis to be valid. You don't need anything like that. Like, for the longest time, I didn't want to try again to get diagnosed because I was so invalidated by a professional. But I just got to a point where I just really wanted to know and I wanted to everything like that. But if that's not your path, your journey, that's totally fine. Like, you can identify however you want. And yes, if you are experiencing dissociation, let's definitely look into grounding techniques, and what works for one person won't always work for the next person. And yes, everybody's experience is going to be different. Like, a lot of people claim that systems are faking it because your switch doesn't look the way that that person's did. Like, you're faking
Yeah.
it, or like this altar's too extravagant. Like, you're just acting. Like, everybody's experience is different, and so, yeah,
Just because you have one altar doesn't mean that this other person should have the same exact altar that you do,
mhm,
because you probably didn't suffer the same trauma that they did or the same trauma that you did. People have to realize, and that's the biggest thing here, is we want people to understand it, to understand that people with OSDD, people are good. They're good people, just like Angel, like we have with us today. So, Angel, I just want to thank you again, and I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to you. Thank you for trusting us with your story, your experiences, and the parts of yourself that were once forced into silence. Thank you for letting us see your strength, not just the polished strength the world admires, but the raw, honest, vulnerable courage that takes real bravery to share. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And tonight, you reminded every listener that healing is possible, that survival is strength, and that none of us are alone in our battles. From my heart to yours, thank you for being here, for educating us, and for showing us what resilience truly looks like. We honor you and we appreciate you and your story, Angel. Thank you so much.
thank you. Yes, I super appreciate you as well, and you had said before your mission almost is like there's 8 billion people on the planet, and so there's 8 billion stories to be told, and so I'm just very grateful to you to give people that platform to tell their stories, so thank you very much.
Thank you. And like I said, I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, especially for the first time, so people can really see what it's like. That people that are living with OSDD are not the monsters underneath your bed. They're very beautiful souls like Angel. And you'll hear her story and you'll see that just because you have a mental health disorder or are living with OSDD, it doesn't make you a bad person at all. It doesn't make you the monster under your bed. It doesn't make you the monster on the corner. It's very much, like Angel. She came on, she shared her story, and we are so glad and grateful that she did. And I hope you have a great weekend, Angel. And thank you for joining and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
You too. Peace and love. Peace and love. Uncle Jimmy out.